The alarm sirens screamed across New Haven Colony just after dawn. Day One dropped his coffee mug and ran to the window of his small living quarters. Above the settlement, 3 massive ships hung in the sky like dark clouds. They were nothing like the human vessels he knew. These were sleek, predatory things covered in black armor that seemed to drink in the morning light. The Valkyrie had come. Day One had heard stories about them. Everyone in the outer colonies had. The Valkyrie Empire ruled a dozen star systems with an iron fist. They were reptilian creatures who believed themselves superior to all other species. Humans were barely a footnote in galactic affairs, too new and too weak to matter. New Haven was just a mining colony, home to 3,000 souls trying to scratch out a living on the frontier. They had no defenses, no weapons that could challenge ships like those. The invasion took less than an hour. Valkyrie soldiers swept through the streets in their dark armor. They didn't kill anyone, which somehow made it worse. They simply gathered everyone in the central plaza and waited. Day One stood among his neighbors, watching as more soldiers marched back and forth. They moved with casual arrogance, as if the humans were nothing more than insects. A transport landed in the plaza. The door opened, and a Valkyrie walked out. He was taller than the soldiers, his scales a deeper black with crimson patterns along his neck. He wore robes instead of armor, and a device on his chest translated his hissing voice into human language. "I am Lord Dexriel, commander of the Valkyrie Third Fleet," he announced. "Your vessel violated our territorial border 3 days ago. This is your punishment." Someone in the crowd started to protest that it was an accident, a navigation error. A soldier struck him down with the butt of a weapon. The man didn't get up. No one else spoke. "You will pay tribute to the Valkyrie Empire," Dexriel continued. 20% of all minerals you extract will be sent to us. You will host a Valkyrie garrison. You will obey all commands given by Valkyrie representatives." He paused, his lipless mouth pulling back in what might have been a smile. "And because we are generous, we will give you gifts." Confused murmurs ran through the crowd. Gifts? What kind of conqueror gave gifts? More soldiers emerged from the transport. Between them, they dragged figures in chains. Day One counted 12 of them, all from different alien species he didn't recognize. They looked beaten, broken. Their clothes were little more than rags. "These are the defeated," Dexriel said. "Former nobles from species we have conquered. We kept them as reminders of our victories. Now we give them to you, so you will understand your place in the galaxy. You are so insignificant that even our slaves are too good for you." The Valkyrie soldiers laughed. It was a cold, hissing sound that made Day One's skin crawl. Dexriel began calling out names randomly from a datapad. When someone was called, they had to step forward and receive one of the chained prisoners. It was cruel theater, designed to humiliate both the humans and the slaves. Day One, water reclamation engineer. His blood went cold. He hadn't expected to be chosen. He was nobody, just a maintenance worker who fixed pipes and filters. But he had no choice. He stepped forward on shaking legs. A soldier shoved a figure toward him. She stumbled and nearly fell. Day One caught her by instinct, steadying her. She was humanoid, roughly his height, with pale skin that bore faint patterns of silver markings. Her hair was long and unkempt, hanging in dirty tangles. But it was her eyes that struck him. They were completely empty, like looking into abandoned rooms. "This is Hana," Dexriel said. "Once the 4th princess of the Lyrathi Dominion. Her people thought themselves enlightened, superior in art and science. We crushed them 20 years ago. She has served the Valkyrie ever since." He gestured dismissively. "She is yours now. A servant for a servant." How appropriate. More laughter from the soldiers. Day One looked at the woman Hana. She didn't react to any of it. She just stood there in her chains, staring at nothing. The ceremony continued until all 12 prisoners had been distributed. Then Xrael delivered his final warning. Any resistance would be met with death. Any attempt to help the human government would be met with death. The Valkyrie would be watching, always watching. The ships remained in orbit as the soldiers established their garrison. The humans were dismissed to return to their homes. Day One walked back to his quarters with Hana shuffling beside him in chains. People stared as they passed. Some looked at him with pity. Others looked away, ashamed. His living space was small, just 2 rooms in a prefab housing unit. A main room that served as kitchen and living area, and a bedroom barely big enough for a bed. He'd lived alone for 3 years, ever since the transport accident that killed his wife Yoonji and daughter Minji. He'd kept it clean but sparse. There was nothing personal on the walls, no pictures or decorations. Just functional furniture and the basic supplies he needed to survive. Hana stood in the doorway, still chained. She made no move to enter, waiting for orders like a machine. Day One swallowed hard. He'd never owned anything before, let alone a person. The very idea made him sick. He looked at the chains around her wrists and ankles, connected by a short length that forced her to take small steps. "Wait here," he said quietly. He went to his toolkit and found a plasma cutter, normally used for repair work. He set it to low power and approached her carefully. "I'm going to remove these. Don't be afraid." Hana didn't respond. She didn't even look at him. He cut through the chains one by one, the metal falling away with small showers of sparks. When the last one dropped to the floor, she still didn't move. She just stood there, rubbing her wrists absently. Day One gestured to the room. "You can sit. The bed is yours. I'll sleep out here." Nothing. No reaction at all. He made a simple meal from his rations, splitting it onto 2 plates. He set one in front of her at the small table. She looked at it like it might be poison. But eventually, slowly, she began to eat. She ate like someone who expected the food to be taken away at any moment, quick mechanical bites. That night, Day One gave her the bedroom and closed the door. He lay on the couch in the main room, staring at the ceiling. He could hear the Valkyrie patrols outside, their heavy footsteps echoing through the settlement. He'd been given a broken princess as a joke. A reminder that humans meant nothing in the grand scheme of the galaxy. He was supposed to use her, degrade her, complete the humiliation the Valkyrie had started. But Day One had lost everyone he loved. He knew what it felt like to be hollow inside. He knew what it meant to just exist without really living. And he wouldn't add to this woman's suffering. Tomorrow he would go back to work. Life would continue under Valkyrie rule. But in this small space, he could at least offer one person dignity. It wasn't much, but it was something. In the bedroom, Hana sat in the corner, not on the bed. She'd been given to a human as a final insult, another master in a long line of masters. She waited for him to come through the door, to demand things from her. But he never did. She didn't sleep that night. She just sat there, trying to understand what kind of trap this was. The first week passed in silence. Day One went to work each morning at the water reclamation facility, while Hana stayed in the quarters. He left food for her, simple rations that he split equally between them. When he returned each evening, the food was usually gone, but she never acknowledged him. She just sat in corners or stared out the window at nothing. He didn't push. He didn't demand conversation or gratitude. He simply existed alongside her, giving her space to breathe. The water facility was Day One's refuge. He understood machines and systems. Water came in dirty, passed through filters and purifiers, and came out clean, simple, logical, unlike everything else in his life right now. His supervisor, Ji Woo, noticed he was distracted. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd run the facility for a decade. "You got one of them," she said one afternoon. It wasn't a question. Day one nodded, checking a pressure gauge without really seeing it. "The Valkyrie are bastards," Jiwoo said quietly, "making us take slaves to prove we're nothing." "How's she doing?" "She doesn't talk. Doesn't do anything, really. Just exists." Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Can't blame her. 20 years as their trophy. "I'd be broken too." She put a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good man, Day One. Don't let them turn you into something else." He thought about that conversation on the walk home. The settlement felt different now, darker. Valkyrie soldiers patrolled the streets in pairs, their weapons always visible. People hurried from place to place, eyes down. The occupation had only been a week, but already it had changed everyone. When he entered his quarters, Hana was in her usual spot by the window. But this time, she turned to look at him. It was the first time she'd acknowledged his presence directly. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was rough from disuse, barely above a whisper. Day One set down his work bag. "Why what? Why don't you use me? Command me? I'm your property now." That's what the Valkyrie said. Her empty eyes studied him. "Are you waiting for something?" He pulled out a chair and sat down, but kept his distance. "I'm not waiting for anything. You're not my property. You're a person." "I was a person," she said, 20 years ago. Now I'm just a thing that breathes." "No." Day One shook his head. "You're still a person. What they did to you, what they took from you, that doesn't change what you are." Hana laughed, but it was a broken sound. "You're naive." Sweet, maybe, but naive. The galaxy doesn't work like that. There are conquerors and conquered. Masters and slaves. That's reality. Then reality is wrong. She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for deception. When she didn't find any, something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, not yet. But maybe the memory of what hope once felt like. After that, things changed slowly. Hana started eating at the table instead of alone in the bedroom. She didn't talk much, but she listened when Day One spoke about his work or the settlement. He told her about his wife and daughter, about the accident, how he'd buried himself in work to avoid feeling anything. One evening, 2 weeks after her arrival, Hana spoke about her past, about the Lyrathi homeworld with its crystal cities and floating gardens, about her family, her 3 older siblings, her parents. She described the day the Valkyrie came, how the invasion lasted only hours because the Lyrathi had no weapons, had never believed in war. "We thought we were enlightened," she said bitterly. "We studied art and science and philosophy. We believed other species would respect that. We were fools." "You weren't fools," Day One said. "You just believed the best of others. That's not weakness. It got my people enslaved. It got my parents executed in front of me." Her fingers traced the silver markings on her skin. These used to glow when we felt strong emotions. Joy, love, hope. They haven't glowed in 20 years. Day One wanted to say something comforting, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he went to his old storage box and pulled out a data pad. "I have some music files. Human classical mostly. My wife loved it. Would you like to listen?" Hana nodded slowly. He played something gentle, a piano piece from centuries ago. She closed her eyes, and for just a moment, her face relaxed. The constant tension drained away. They fell into a routine after that. Day One would work while Hana explored the quarters, touching things carefully, like she was relearning how to interact with the world. She started helping with small tasks, cleaning or preparing food. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to contribute. She taught him Lyrathi meditation techniques to help with his insomnia. He taught her about human literature, reading passages from old books. Slowly, carefully, they built something fragile between them. Not quite friendship yet, but the foundation of it. Then the overseer came. It was the third week of occupation. Day one was at work when he got the alert that a Valkyrie official was inspecting assigned slaves. His blood went cold. He ran home as fast as he could. He arrived to find a Valkyrie overseer in his quarters, towering over Hana. She was sitting at the table, not on the floor, and the overseer was furious. "You dare sit like an equal?" The overseer hissed. "You dare occupy furniture while your master is away?" "She's not," Day One started. The overseer's scaled hand struck Hana across the face, sending her sprawling. "Silence, human. This slave has forgotten her place. You have failed to properly subjugate her." He kicked her while she was down, his boot catching her ribs. Hana curled into a ball, protecting her vital organs with practiced efficiency. This wasn't new to her. She'd endured this before. Day One moved without thinking, stepping between them. "Stop. Please, I'll—" The overseer grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You will keep this slave in line. She will kneel when spoken to. She will sleep on the floor. She will show proper submission at all times. If I return and find her acting above her station again, you will both be punished severely." He dropped Day One in a heap. "Do you understand?" "Yes," Day One choked out. The overseer left, his heavy footsteps receding down the corridor. Day One rushed to Hana's side. She was bleeding from her mouth, her face already swelling. He helped her to the couch, hands shaking as he got the medical kit. "I'm sorry," he whispered, cleaning the wound on her lip. "I'm so sorry." "Not your fault," Hana said. Her voice was steady despite the pain. 20 years had taught her how to endure. "This is what I am. A slave. A thing to be beaten. No." Day One's hands were gentle as he applied antiseptic. "You're not. And I won't let them make you believe that. You can't stop them. You can't even protect yourself. Maybe not. But I can choose how I treat you. I can choose to see you as you are." He met her eyes. A princess. A person. Someone who deserves dignity. Hana's breath caught. And then, for the first time in 20 years, she cried. Not silent tears, but deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere far inside her. Day One held her carefully, letting her release decades of suppressed pain. When she finally quieted, she pulled back and looked at him. "Why do you care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "Because someone should," he said simply. "Because you're here, and you're hurting, and I can help. That's enough." That night, Hana slept on the bed while Day One took the couch like always. But something had changed between them. The walls had started to come down. In the darkness, Hana touched the markings on her arm. For just a second, barely visible, they flickered with the faintest glow. She didn't notice, but something inside her, something she'd thought long dead, was beginning to wake up. The bruises on Hana's face faded over the next week, but something else changed. She stopped hiding. She moved through the quarters with more confidence, helped Day One with repairs, even smiled occasionally when he told her stories about his work. The empty look in her eyes was slowly being replaced by something alive. One evening, Day One came home to find her studying his datapad, scrolling through technical documents about the water reclamation system. "Sorry," she said quickly, setting it down. "I was just curious." "Don't apologize. Read whatever you want." He sat down across from her. "Do you understand any of it?" Hana tilted her head. "Most of it. Your filtration system is functional, but inefficient. The Lyrathi developed biofilters centuries ago that could process 3 times the volume with half the energy consumption." Day One blinked. "You know engineering?" All Lyrathi nobility studied multiple disciplines. Science, art, philosophy, governance. She looked down at her hands. I was particularly interested in environmental systems. My world had perfect ecological balance. Every system supported every other system. It was beautiful. Could you improve our facility? She looked up, surprised. I'm a slave. No one would listen to me. I'm listening. And Ji Woo, my supervisor, she's practical. If you can make the system better, she won't care where the ideas come from. Hana hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can try. Over the next few days, she worked with Day One to modify the filtration protocols. She couldn't implement the full biofilter system without materials they didn't have, but she optimized the existing setup. When they tested it, the efficiency jumped by 40%. Ji Woo was impressed. Where did you learn this? From her, Day One said, gesturing to Hana. Ji Woo studied Hana for a long moment. Then she smiled. Good work. Both of you. She paused. Day One, can I speak with you privately? They stepped into the facility office. Ji Woo closed the door, and her expression turned serious. There's something you should know, she said quietly. Some of us are organizing. Nothing violent, just information gathering. We're documenting what the Valkyrie are doing here and transmitting it to other colonies, to the wider galaxy, building a record of their crimes. Day One's heart started pounding. That's dangerous. Everything is dangerous now. But we can't just accept this. We have to resist somehow. She looked him in the eye. I'm telling you because we could use Hana's knowledge. She's been inside the Valkyrie system for 20 years. She knows things that could help us. I can't ask her to risk herself like that. Then don't ask. But tell her the option exists. Let her choose. That night, Day One explained everything to Hana. He expected her to be afraid, to refuse. Instead, her eyes lit up with something fierce. Yes, she said immediately. I want to help. Hana, if they catch us, they've already taken everything from me. 20 years of my life, my family, my world. If I can hurt them, even a little, it's worth the risk. She grabbed his hand. Please, let me do something that matters. He squeezed her hand back. Okay, but we're careful. No unnecessary risks. They joined Ji Woo's resistance cell the next day. There were 12 others, all colonists who refused to accept subjugation quietly. They met in maintenance tunnels beneath the settlement, away from Valkyrie sensors. Hana became invaluable immediately. She explained Valkyrie hierarchy and protocols, their security systems, their weaknesses. She knew which officers were brutal and which were merely following orders. She knew their patrol patterns, their communication frequencies, their blind spots. The Valkyrie Empire is built on fear, she explained to the group. But it's fragile. They've conquered so many species that they're spread thin. They rely on overwhelming force and terror to keep control. If enough conquered worlds resist us simultaneously, they can't respond to all of them. So we coordinate with other resistance movements, Ji Woo said. Share information and timing. Exactly. And we expose them. The Valkyrie claim to be bringing order to the galaxy. We show the truth of what they are. Over the following weeks, they worked in secret. Hana and Day One spent their evenings collecting data, recording Valkyrie movements, documenting abuses. Other cell members tapped into communication channels and transmitted everything to sympathetic contacts in other systems. But the work brought Hana and Day One even closer. They spent long nights in his quarters, huddled over data pads, planning and analyzing. They learned to work in perfect sync, anticipating each other's thoughts. When Hana explained complex Valkyrie technology, Day One asked exactly the right questions. When Day One worried about security, Hana knew how to ease his concerns. One night, as they reviewed surveillance footage, Hana started laughing. Actually laughing, a genuine sound of amusement. Day one looked up, startled. What? Look at this officer. She pointed at the screen. He's checking the same corridor 3 times because he got lost. The Volcari act superior, but half of them are incompetent. She wiped tears from her eyes, still laughing. Day one found himself laughing too. It felt good, natural. When was the last time he'd laughed like this? Years, maybe. When they calmed down, Hana was smiling at him. A real, warm smile. And her markings, the silver patterns on her skin, were glowing softly. Both of them noticed at the same time. Hana touched her arm, watching the light pulse gently. They're glowing, she whispered, awed. What does it mean? It means... She looked at him, and there was vulnerability in her expression. It means I'm feeling something real. Hope. Joy. Maybe. She trailed off, not finishing the thought. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Day one wanted to say something, to acknowledge what was growing between them. But before he could find the words, an alert chimed on his datapad. It was from Ji-Woo. Emergency. Volcari patrols were conducting random inspections. Everyone needed to hide any resistance materials immediately. They scrambled, wiping data files and hiding equipment. Day one had just closed the last storage panel when heavy footsteps echoed outside. Volcari soldiers were going door to door. Hana grabbed his arm. The datapad. The one with the transmission logs. Where is it? His blood went cold. He'd left it on the table. In plain sight. The footsteps stopped outside their door. Hide it, Hana hissed. Now. But there was no time. The door opened. A Volcari soldier stepped inside, his eyes immediately locking onto the datapad on the table. Day one's mind raced. They were caught. Everything was over. The soldier walked toward the table, reaching for the pad. And then Hana stepped forward, putting herself between the soldier and the evidence. Please, she said in the Volcari language, her voice taking on a submissive tone Day one had never heard from her. My master was just reviewing my behavior reports. I've been disobedient. He's documenting my failures. The soldier paused. Behavior reports? Yes. The overseer ordered him to keep detailed records of my submission. She lowered her eyes. I've been struggling to accept my place. It was a gamble. A huge risk. But the soldier seemed to buy it. He picked up the datapad, scrolling through the files. Thanks to Hana's quick thinking, the file names could be interpreted either way. Task completion logs could mean Volcari assignments. Daily reports could mean behavior tracking. The soldier grunted and tossed the pad back on the table. See that she learns her place, human. Or we'll teach her ourselves. He left without another word. When the door closed, Day one exhaled shakily. That was too close. Hana was trembling. They almost found it. We need to be more careful. He pulled her into a hug without thinking. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into it, her arms coming up to hold him back. Thank you, he murmured. You saved us. We saved us, she corrected softly. We're in this together. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other. When they finally pulled apart, both of them knew something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just partnership anymore. It was something deeper, something neither of them had expected to feel again. But outside, the Volcari patrols continued. And in the shadows, the resistance prepared for what would come next. The resistance grew bolder. More colonists joined. More information flowed to other worlds. The Volcari atrocities were being documented and shared across the galaxy. Species that had remained neutral were starting to pay attention. Some were even expressing outrage. But success bred callousness. It happened 3 months after the occupation began. Day one and Hana were encoding a transmission in the maintenance tunnels when the lights suddenly blazed to life. Valkyrie soldiers poured in from both ends, weapons raised. "Don't move!" They were surrounded in seconds. A soldier ripped the datapad from Day One's hands, while another grabbed Hana roughly. She didn't resist. Neither did Day One. There was no point. They were dragged through the settlement in chains. Colonists watched from windows and doorways, their faces stricken with fear. Ji Woo was already in the plaza, along with 5 other resistance members. All of them were on their knees, surrounded by guards. Lord Dexriel stood on a platform, waiting. When Day One and Hana were thrown at his feet, he looked down with something like satisfaction. "How predictable," the Valkyrie commander said. "I knew one of you would eventually try something. Humans are so stubborn, so foolishly optimistic." He gestured to the captured colonists. "Your little resistance has been useful. We let it continue to identify all the troublemakers at once." Day One's heart sank. They'd known. The Valkyrie had known all along and were just waiting to catch everyone involved. "And you," Dexriel turned to Hana, a former princess, reduced to plotting with primitives. "How far you've fallen." He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "I could have sold you to the pleasure houses years ago, but I kept you as a reminder. A broken symbol of Lyrathi arrogance." Hana jerked her head away from his grip. "Better broken than serving you?" The slap sent her sprawling. The one lunged forward, but soldiers held him back. Dexriel addressed the gathered colonists who'd been forced to watch. "Let this be a lesson. Resistance is futile. The Valkyrie Empire is eternal." He pointed at Jiwoo and the other cell members. "These traitors will be sent to labor camps for the rest of their lives." Relief flickered through Day One. Labor camps were brutal but survivable. Then Dexriel turned to him and Hana. "But these two require special punishment. The human, for daring to treat a slave as an equal, and the Lyrathi for forgetting what she is." He smiled coldly. "You will both be executed at dawn, publicly." The words hit like physical blows. Executed. Dawn was only a few hours away. They were thrown into a holding cell beneath the garrison. It was small and dark, just 4 metal walls and a single dim light. Day One sat against one wall, while Hana paced like a caged animal. "This is my fault," she said. "If I hadn't insisted on joining the resistance." "Don't." Day One's voice was firm. "We made this choice together. Both of us. You could have said no. You could have stayed safe. Safe and alone. Safe and watching injustice happen without trying to stop it." He stood up and caught her hand. "I don't regret this. Any of it." Hana stopped pacing. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I regret dragging you into my war. It's not your war. It's everyone's war. The Valkyrie needed to be exposed." He squeezed her hand. "At least we did that. Other worlds know the truth now. Maybe it'll make a difference." They sat down together, backs against the wall. The metal was cold, but their joined hands were warm. After a long silence, Hana spoke quietly. "There's something I never told you. A Lyrathi ability we kept secret from the Valkyrie. What is it? We call it the resonance bond. It's a connection between 2 Lyrathi who share deep emotional ties. They can sense each other's feelings, share strength when one is weak." She looked at him. "It can also be formed between a Lyrathi and another species, if the connection is strong enough." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because the bond can do something else. It can share life force. If one person is dying, the other can sustain them temporarily." She turned to face him fully. "When they execute us tomorrow, I can use the bond to save you. Transfer my remaining life energy to keep you alive long enough for—" "No." Day One's voice was hard. "Absolutely not." "Day One, please. You think I'd let you die in my place?" He was almost shouting now, the first time he'd raised his voice at her. "You think I could live with that?" Better than both of us dying for nothing. It wouldn't be for nothing if we both stood together. He took her shoulders. Hannah, I'm not worth more than you. You're not a sacrifice to save me. We're equals, partners. Tears were streaming down her face now. I can't watch you die. I can't. Not when I finally found someone who sees me as a person, who treats me with dignity, her voice broke, who I love. The word hung in the air between them. Day One's anger drained away, replaced by something tender and aching. I love you too, he said softly. That's why I can't let you do this. If we're going to die, we die together. As equals. Hannah threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tightly, his own tears falling into her hair. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the darkness. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah wiped her eyes. I've spent 20 years as a slave. A thing. A broken symbol. She touched his face gently. These last few months with you, I was a person again. I was Hannah, not a princess, not a slave. Just myself. You gave me the same gift, they once said. After my family died, I was just existing, going through motions. You reminded me what it means to care about someone, to fight for something. They spent their last hours talking softly, sharing memories and regrets and hopes that would never be fulfilled. Hannah told him about Lyrathi festivals and the songs her mother used to sing. Day One told her about Earth, about oceans and forests and the stars over his childhood home. As dawn approached, they heard footsteps outside the cell. Valkyrie soldiers had come for them. But before the door opened, there was a strange sound. A deep thrumming that shook the walls. Then another. The lights flickered. The cell door burst open, but it wasn't Valkyrie soldiers. It was Ji Woo holding a stolen weapon with a group of armed colonists behind her. Come on, she shouted. We don't have much time. What's happening? Day One scrambled to his feet. Everything. Ji Woo was grinning fiercely. The transmissions worked. The galaxy responded. There are ships in orbit, multiple species, demanding the Valkyrie withdraw. The garrison is under attack. They ran through the corridors. The sounds of battle echoed everywhere. Explosions, weapon fire, shouting in multiple languages. The Valkyrie garrison was being overwhelmed by colonists who'd risen up when the alien fleet arrived. Outside, the sky was full of ships. Not just one or two, but dozens. Different species, different designs, all united against the Valkyrie occupation. Fighters screamed overhead, engaging the 3 Valkyrie cruisers. In the plaza, resistance fighters had captured Lord Dex Ryle. He was on his knees now, the tables turned. A Lyrathi ship landed nearby. The door opened, and several figures emerged. They were tall and elegant, their skin marked with the same silver patterns as Hannah's. But theirs were glowing brightly with hope and determination. One of them, an elderly Lyrathi with white hair, saw Hannah and gasped. Fourth princess? You live? Hannah stepped forward, trembling. Tae-jun? You survived? Many of us survived, Tae-jun said. We've been scattered, hiding, waiting for a chance. When your transmissions revealed what the Valkyrie truly are, the galaxy finally listened. We've come to free New Haven and all other occupied worlds. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The combined fleet was too strong. The Valkyrie cruisers fled, leaving the garrison to surrender. Lord Dexriel was taken into custody. As the sun set on a day that should have seen their execution, Day One and Hannah stood together watching the freed colony celebrate. Her markings glowed brilliantly, pulsing with joy and relief. The Valkyrie Empire began to crumble within weeks. World after world rose up, emboldened by what happened at New Haven. The evidence the resistance had gathered spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been neutral suddenly found their moral compass. Trade sanctions were imposed. Diplomatic relations severed. The Valkyrie found themselves isolated and surrounded. New Haven entered a period of recovery. The damage from the battle was repaired. The colonists who'd been sent to labor camps were rescued and brought home. Ji Woo became the settlement's unofficial leader, respected for her courage during the occupation. But for Hannah, everything was complicated. The Lyrathi who'd survived their people's conquest wanted her to return with them. They were rebuilding their world, trying to restore what had been lost. They needed leaders, symbols of their culture's resilience. The fourth princess, alive after 20 years, was exactly that symbol. Taejung visited Day One's quarters a week after the liberation. He was polite but formal as he sat across from them at the small table. "Princess Hana," he began, using her title deliberately. "Your people need you. We've lost so much. The royal family, our cultural centers, our way of life. You represent continuity with our past." Hana's markings dimmed slightly. "I appreciate that, Taejun. But I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. I don't know if I can be what you need. You survived. That alone makes you invaluable." Taejun's eyes moved to Day One, and his expression tightened. "Though I confess I was surprised to learn of your attachment to this human." Day One felt the judgment in those words. He started to stand, to leave them to talk privately, but Hana grabbed his hand. "Day One isn't an attachment. He's the reason I survived with my soul intact." Her voice was firm. "When the Valkyrie gave me to him as a joke, as a final humiliation, he treated me like a person. Not a trophy, not a slave, not even a princess. Just a person who deserved dignity. I understand he was kind to you." "Kind?" Hannah's markings flared brighter. "He shared his food when he barely had enough for himself. He gave me his bed and slept on the floor. He asked nothing of me except that I exist." She stood up, pulling Day One with her. "The Lyrathi nobility claimed to be enlightened, but we built our society on hierarchy. Birth determined worth. Day One showed me something different. That worth comes from how you treat others when you have nothing to gain from it." Taejun was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You've changed, Princess." "I have. And if you want me to help rebuild our world, it has to be a different world. One built on equality and compassion, not aristocratic privilege. And this human? What role does he play in your future?" Hannah looked at Day One, her eyes soft. "Whatever role he wants. He's my partner, my equal. I won't return to Lyrith without him, and I won't go anywhere he isn't welcome as my chosen companion." Taejun studied them both. Finally, his stern expression softened. "Then I was wrong about many things. About humans, about what makes someone worthy of respect." He stood and bowed to both of them equally. "You would both be welcome on Lyrith. Not as princess and servant, but as partners in rebuilding." After Taejun left, Day One and Hana stood together in silence. Then Day One laughed, a bit shakily. "Did you just threaten to abandon your people if they don't accept me?" "I didn't threaten. I stated a fact." Hana turned to face him. "I spent 20 years being what others wanted me to be. A princess, a slave, a symbol. Now I get to choose who I am. And I choose to be with you." Day One pulled her close. "I don't want you to give up your people for me. I'm not giving them up. I'm changing the terms." She rested her forehead against his. "We can help them rebuild. Both of us. But only if they understand that the old ways, the hierarchy, and rigid roles, that all led to weakness. Real strength comes from treating everyone with respect." Over the following weeks, they made plans. Hannah would return to Lyrith, but Day One would come with her. They'd work together, to help the Lyrathi rebuild their society on new principles. Principles of equality, dignity, and compassion. Human principles, Hana called them, though Day One argued they should be universal principles. The night before they were scheduled to leave New Haven, Jiwoo threw them a farewell party. The whole settlement came out. There was food and music and dancing. Humans and Lyrathi and several other alien species who'd settled in the colony, all celebrating together. "You did good," Jiwoo told Day One, pressing a glass of something alcoholic into his hand. "The quiet engineer who never talked to anyone, and you ended up starting a revolution." "I didn't start anything. I just treated someone with basic decency. That's exactly what started it." She clinked her glass against his. "Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is be kind when the world expects cruelty." Across the room, Hana was talking with some of the Lyrathi who'd be traveling with them. Her markings glowed constantly now, bright and beautiful. Day One had learned to read the patterns. Right now they showed joy mixed with anticipation and just a touch of nervousness. She caught him watching and smiled, excusing herself to join him. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. Terrified, she admitted. "I haven't been home in 20 years. I haven't been home in 20 years. I haven't been home in 20 years. What if I don't recognize it? What if it doesn't feel like home anymore? Then we'll make a new home. Together." He took her hand. "You're not going back as the person you were. You're going back as who you've become. That's better." She kissed him softly. Around them, the party continued, but for a moment they were alone in the crowd. The next morning, they boarded the Lyrathi ship. Day One took one last look at New Haven, at the prefab buildings and the water facility where he'd spent so many years. This place had been his refuge after tragedy, and then it had become his prison under occupation. Now it was something else, a symbol of resistance and hope. The journey to Lyrith took 2 weeks. Hana spent the time teaching Day One her language and culture, while he shared human philosophy and literature with the Lyrathi crew. They were curious about humans now, these strange beings who'd helped spark a galactic uprising with simple acts of kindness. When they arrived at Lyrith, Day One was stunned. Even damaged and partially ruined, the planet was beautiful. Crystal structures caught the light of 2 suns, creating rainbows that danced across everything. Gardens floated on anti-gravity platforms, filled with plants that sang in the wind. The Lyrathi who'd survived gathered to welcome their princess home. Thousands of them, their markings glowing with hope. When Hana emerged from the ship with Day One at her side, there was a moment of confused silence. Then Hana spoke, her voice amplified across the crowd. "I've returned home. But I haven't returned alone, and I haven't returned as the princess you remember. This is Day One, my partner. A human who showed me that true nobility comes from how we treat others, not from birth or title. If we're to rebuild Lyrith, we must rebuild it on principles of equality and compassion. Everyone, regardless of species or origin, has worth." The silence stretched. Then, slowly, one Lyrathi began to glow brighter, their markings pulsing with acceptance. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the entire crowd was blazing with light, a sea of silver patterns expressing hope and agreement. Taejeon stepped forward. "Then let us build a new Lyrith, one worthy of the sacrifice our people made, and worthy of the lessons our princes learned among the humans." The rebuilding was hard work. The Day One helped design new systems for the cities, combining Lyrathi biotech with human practicality. Hana worked with the cultural councils, rewriting old laws to emphasize equality. They argued sometimes, disagreed about approaches, but they always worked through it together, as partners. 6 months after arriving, they stood in the garden they'd planted together on the outskirts of the restored capital. It contained plants from both Lyrith and Earth, growing side by side. Flowers that glowed at night next to roses that filled the air with perfume. It was a small thing, but it represented everything they were trying to build. "Do you regret it?" Hannah asked quietly. "Leaving New Haven? Leaving your home?" "New Haven was where I existed," Day One said. "This is where I'm living." He looked at her, at the way the sunset made her markings shimmer. "Wherever you are, that's home." She kissed him, and her markings blazed so brightly they illuminated the whole garden. "The Valkyrie gave me to you in Mockery. They wanted to show how little humans mattered, how broken I was. They never imagined you'd treat me like I had worth. You always had worth. I just helped you remember it." "No," Hannah shook her head. "You showed me a new kind of worth. Not based on what I was born to be, but on who I chose to become." She gestured to the garden, to the city beyond, to the Lyrathi and humans and other species working together. "All of this started because you made a choice. To be kind when it would have been easier to be cruel. To see a person when the galaxy saw a broken slave." Day One pulled her close. "I just did what felt right. That's what makes it extraordinary. You didn't do it for reward or recognition. You did it because you believed every person deserves dignity." She looked up at him, her eyes bright. "The galaxy is changing because of that belief. Species that never talk to each other are working together now. The Valkyrie Empire is falling. And it all started in a small hab unit on New Haven, with a grieving engineer and a broken princess.